when he came in and he was hitting me, and he left the room and went down to the basement, and he brought back a gun, and he had a gun with him, and we were fighting, and he was saying things, and I'm like, don't do this, what are you doing? And I wasn't sure what he was going to do with it, and he actually pointed it to himself, and the first shot just went by his side. It didn't actually hit him, but as he brought the gun around, because it was a semi-automatic, he had his finger on the trigger. The gun went off a second time.
Welcome to another empowering episode of H.E.R, Hormones, Empowerment, and Restoration. Today we are joined by a truly inspiring guest, Susie Delo, founder and director of the U.Matter Foundation. Susie's journey is a testament to resilience and the power of turning life's challenges into a mission for positive change. Through her foundation, Susie is dedicated to uplifting others by providing trauma-informed care, mental wellness coaching, and self-defense training with a powerful focus on empowerment. Susie's work is not just about changing lives. It's about transforming communities, building resilience, and providing individuals with the confidence and tools they need to thrive. She is passionate about helping others embrace their challenges and own their journeys. We're so honored to have her with us today to share her journey, insights, and the incredible work she has done through the U.Matter Foundation. Hi, Susie. I am so excited to get you on the show today. For those of you who don't know, Susie is actually local to me, and we connected a couple months ago now. And I am just so excited for you to be here. So excited for you to share your story and your mission. But want to start with your journey. So can you tell us about you? Tell us how you got started, and why does the work you do with the U.Matter Foundation mean so much?
Okay, and first of all, thank you, Minnie, for having me. I'm so excited that we're doing this. Just like our first time we sat down and talked, I loved how we just automatically connected.
Yeah,
And so
it's
that
so
was
fun.
it was very important to me. And even the journey since then until now, even coming in, working in the place that you're at, even in the hallway, is just wonderful. Letting people know about You Matter, and I appreciate that opportunity today.
Yeah,
So thank you.
absolutely.
So the journey for me and You Matter and how I got there is from my childhood, and just being part of an environment of poverty and abuse as a child, and then growing up in an environment of alcoholism and just different things of trauma and how it affects everyone in life. And I just look back on all that, and I just wanted to take that, heal from it, but I also want to help other people. So I go and I share my story with individuals, organizations, conferences, at churches, and hoping that they'll want to start sharing their story so they can help, that'll help them in their healing journey. I just think that's so important. And so with the abuse from at a young age with the parents and other people, and people dying in your life, that's another part of trauma. I had a brother who passed away when he was 12. I was 8. He drowned in Lake
Wow.
Erie. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and that affects your family dynamic.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I talk about trauma, and the reason I share is because I want others to know they're not alone, and I can be a support system for them. That's what they need, or just to go back and relive or try to heal through those traumas is hard, but it's important to do that. And
Absolutely.
so I share that, and then share that I got married at a young age, and I had my daughter with an abusive person. And he also came from a very abusive home life too. And there was a lot of trauma going on all around him. So when you bring two people together that have gone through trauma, most of their adult life, a child life, as a child, it's just what you bring into the next relationship or the next season of your life. And so that during that time of being married at a young age and trying to form a family, because our life was so unhealthy, we were still unhealthy,
Right.
and it caused a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing. And I like to just share this again, just so people know that they're not alone in that it does happen to anyone at any time, but doesn't make us a bad person or a broken person. And for a long time, I didn't want to share my story and I didn't tell people about what I was going through because of shame. And I thought people wouldn't like me. And that's not the case at all. It's actually totally the opposite. And
Right.
so it got to a point where there was just so much fighting and arguing. And I was working for an attorney's office at the time, and that was so different compared to the way I was raised. It opened my eyes to how life is different and how, wow, people don't swear at you. They treat you with respect and they actually talk to you. You can communicate. And it just opened my eyes to a different world.
Wow.
Even when we went to the country club for administrative secretary day, and
Hmm.
I sat down and I'm at the table. There's all these dishes and silverware. And I'm like, who's going to wash all these dishes? Because my mindset, all we
You're
ever
right.
had, you had a plate and a fork and a cup at your table, and it's just the mindset was so different, even with the people I sat at the table with. And so, you may think you're in a place or a position that you can't get out of, or is this all you know? Is the way your life's going to be. It's not true. You just got
Right.
to open up and communicate to others, connect with people outside of what you were raised in or how you're living at that time can really change your life.
Wow.
And so that didn't sit well with the person I was married with at the time either, because he was used to the life we had. And so that caused a lot of arguing and fighting too. But I really liked how I was being treated. I really liked that there was something different than how I was raised. It got to the point where I didn't want to be in that relationship anymore. And he wasn't happy either. But with drinking, we were raised by alcoholics. We marry alcoholics. Not
Right.
all of us, but I did. And so this is just very hard for me to tell, but I really need to share this because I want others to understand that they can get the help they need. Not that we're helpless and that there's anything wrong with us. It's just good to share your story so you can help other people and, get the connections, get the therapy you need, give your life to God. That's another
Right.
thing I did after the fact. But I always knew he was there now that I know the love of Christ. And so there was just a time we were fighting and he came home, come to me, was being physical, and he was always, threatening to kill himself. And, we saw a lot of that. We heard a lot of that in other people. There was even a time that I even tried to, as a teenager, tried to kill myself with pills, overdose. And that's very
Yes.
hard for me to say too, because nowadays people shame people or shame suicide.
Right.
When people try to take their life. It's just they're in such a low place in their life. They just don't know any way out and they don't know what else to do. And I try to help people understand that. And so when he came in and he was hitting me and he left the room and went down to the basement and he brought back a gun and he had a gun with him. And we were fighting and, he was saying things and I'm like, don't do this. What are you doing? And I wasn't sure what he was going to do with it. And he actually pointed it to himself. And the first shot just went by his side. It didn't actually hit him. But as he brought the gun around, because it was a semi-automatic, he had his finger on the trigger. The gun went off a second time.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it actually, he died from it.
Oh,
And
I'm so
so,
sorry.
yeah. In I was 21 at the time. So that was a lot, up to that point, a lot of trauma in my life. And
Yeah.
there has been things that happened since then have been traumatizing. I really wanted God to take the mess in my life and make it a message. I remarried after that. I had a second child, and the same thing. I didn't work through my healing. I definitely did not work through what just happened to me in my life with, being traumatized by his death and what people said to me, how they blamed me. there was a lot going on at that time. So after it was 2 years later after I got
Hmm.
married again. So there was a time period in between.
Right.
And the same with my second marriage. We both came together. We had things that happened in our life that we didn't heal from. So again, two broken people coming together, it's very hard to mend unless you really work on it. But in that time, I started going to church and I was really grateful and thankful that I had a friend who, said, come to church, check it out. But there was also another person in my life who's still in my life, who is my spiritual godmother. She's actually my first husband's aunt.
Wow.
So, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
just, she's always believed in me and she supports my You Matter now. And it's just a great relationship. And I'm so glad that God put her in my life even before I became a Christian to be an example of a loving, kind person with no judgment. That's important in people's lives. And so after with the, getting remarried and trying to go through that, that was a difficult time too. But I'm so glad I had God through all that. In, eventually after 25 years of marriage, we did get a divorce and we're cordial with each other now. We have adult children, but during that time, I started working for an insurance office. And I think that really helped me with I was there 21 years, but I started going to the chamber and all their events and networking and,
Hmm.
tell them about the insurance office, but building friendships and building connections in the community, because it really matters to me how people are doing and getting support and the help they need in their business, but also in their life because of what I went through. And I just, was it 2022, I started working on, it's called Mastermind with Tony Robbins and Dean.
Hmm.
And I'm like trying to figure out how I can start telling people about my life to help them heal through their trauma. And I also start taking classes for Krav Maga.
Hmm.
And with that, I did that because I wanted to overcome my fear of guns because of that tragic incident in my life. And I just believe that if we can face our fear and work through it, then that part of our trauma that we worked on the healing, I'm not fully healed from it, but I'm doing so much better because I dealt with it.
Right.
And so I worked through that and then I decided, excuse me, that I really love taking these are self-defense classes. And Krav Maga is Israel martial art. They teach the soldiers in Israel to attack the attacker. And so from 2019 to 2022, I took every class they had 5 days a week, and I ended up getting my black belt in it.
Wow. What a
Yeah,
woman.
and that to me is I even teach on a black belt mentality. We all should have it. All strive to better ourselves, self-care, discipline, but all in a good way, just so we feel good and that we can help others. And I took their class to be an instructor only because I love taking the class, not because I was going to be an instructor.
Right.
in in the you get your black belt once you have it. It's in gun, sticks, knives, combatives, and situational awareness. And doing that and taking all the gun courses that came along with it at a range, it helped me overcome that fear of guns. So now I teach situational awareness and self defense, and I did not believe that was going to be a part of me back in 2022 when I started doing the mastermind and wanted to start writing books and I want to start teaching on trauma and helping people through their healing. In the fall of 2022, my instructor asked if I would be an assistant instructor with him. I'm like, sure. I
Uh-huh.
love helping, teaching. And it was a women's self-defense class here in Meadville. And during the class, these women kept coming up to me and they're like, "Hey, we're only here because you're here and you're a woman." And I'm like, "Oh, I do this, because I never thought I'd be standing in front of people teaching. I mean, I thought, more talking to people or being behind like on a podcast. I want to do more podcasts and YouTube, but so I'm like, I can do this. So by January 2023, I started You Matter. And that was teaching situational awareness and self-defense, sharing my testimony, my story of what I went through and, how I got to where I'm at and how people just encourage people that to get them out of where they're at if they're not happy in the place they're at. And by October of that year, the chamber asked me to speak at the Women's Expo. So I was telling my story to, the smaller groups that I was working with up to that time. And I didn't tell them all the stuff. And I haven't yet shared all the stuff little by little.
Right.
I'm getting better at sharing. But this was the Women's Expo, 200 business women. I stood before and I shared my story. And I'm like, yeah. And at first, when God's like saying, this is your time, this is the time you're going to share, I'm like, I don't know about this.
Let's discuss a little more.
I had a good conversation with him. I'm like, they're not going to like me once they know the truth because these women didn't know the truth about me. And it was hard because you get scared, as a child, people are mean. They bully you, they treat you badly because of where you came from because my parents didn't work. We were poverty level, you know. And so when I stood before those women, I shared my story. And then afterwards, all these different women kept coming up to me and hugging me and thanking me and telling me a little bit about their lives and stuff that they could relate or they've gone through. So they made me feel better about myself because they shared and that they had gone through something similar, so I wasn't alone.
Right.
That's why I think it's so important. And then for weeks after that, I kept getting emails from a lot of the ladies just telling me, thanking me, but telling me stuff about their life. And they just said they're not ready to share, but they shared just a little bit with me.
Right.
And so that was so encouraging and empowering.
Mhm.
And so I decided to quit my full-time job.
Just do
And
it.
I know, I mean, it was a leap of faith because and I had my You Matter LLC, but then I started my nonprofit with the You Matter because people wanted to donate and contribute to what I'm doing, and because I do work with people, so with like people that can't afford the services I provide, but I want to make it so no matter where you're at in life, that I can still provide my services. So with
Amazing.
donations and contributions, I'm able to do that, and so. I took that big leap of faith. I quit my full-time job, and the next day I'm like, I think I'm gonna be sick. I'm like, are you sure about this, God? So, but he was sure. And after that women's expo the next day, I felt such a freedom in my mind and my soul, my body that I never felt before. That I can actually be authentic me and people still like me and they care about me and I want people to know they matter and they made me feel like I mattered no matter what happened to me. It didn't define who I am. So
Okay.
that's why God wanted me to share it with everyone because those women in that room really helped me, and then anyone I've come encountered with. So I see I'm continuously healing,
Yeah.
and it makes things so much better, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That was, you know, so many things that you said in there were just like, yep, yep. I mean, it's because I think the thing that stood out to me most were, you were talking about it and you were like, everybody has a story, right? But
Yes.
everybody's story, when they're looking at it, has a little bit of shame of, well, I can't share that. I can't share
Yes.
who I am
Yes.
because nobody's going to like me if I don't share who I am. When in reality, it's the opposite. Because when people see you and they go, oh my God, look at where she's at. Look at where she's come from. Look what God's done in her life. She's like me. Maybe I can do that. And that is so incredibly powerful. And you had so much trauma, right? I mean, you've kind of touched on a lot of it. And um the fact that you are working through it still is another
Yes.
testament of, you know what, there is no quick fix. There is no
Mm-mm.
quick fix. This is a daily process of becoming who I am supposed to be becoming. But along the way, look at all of the amazing things that have happened. Look at where I was, look at where I came from, look at where I'm going. And just so incredibly powerful and so incredibly real that the impact that you're making with your business and in your mission is phenomenal and just absolutely amazing. And you've turned your own life challenges into this.
Hmm.
Um, you mentioned how when you got up and you were talking to those women, and those women started connecting, and that was so powerful, not only for them, but for you, because you realized, oh, I'm not alone up here in my story.
Hmm. Yes.
Do you think that that was the most pivotal moment that led you to create where you are now, or was there another moment that has happened that was like, okay, boom, this is it for sure. This is where I'm going. This is where I'm headed.
That was very pivotal. That gave me the confirmation that I'm doing what God wants me to do with my life. Because I always joke in my classes that God took the mess of my life and made it a message, and I'm going to be doing this for the next 50 years, you know?
Amazing. Uh-huh.
Yes. But there's so many different things that I can never say there's just one thing that was the pivotal um, reason why I did it. I always knew, like, I felt like God was always working me up to it. There's probably moments in my life when I should have done it sooner, but I wasn't ready, even though God was. But, now I'm here and I'm doing it. Because sometimes I feel like, well, I should have done this a long time ago. What took me so long? You can't go back. You can't change it. You can only be where you are today moving forward. And so, and I know, like, I got to get right. I got to write my book. I already have the title of it. I already have the first couple pages written. And I need to do that. And I want to just let people know, don't beat yourself up, because I know, like, because days come and go, and I'm like, I haven't done that. But each day is a new day. And that's what I'm so glad. Even the Bible says it, you know,
Hmm.
each day is a new day. So start that day and go forward. But there's just so many things in my life that pointed me to doing this.
Right.
It's just, you know, getting through the things I've went through, all that pain, there was a purpose and
Hmm.
God can use it. And there's still, I talk about, give examples in my classes and I'm like, okay, God, I don't need no more examples. I'm good.
Exactly. Totally got it. Thank
I'm
you.
good. Got it. So,
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, you say, well, I should have done this a long time ago. You can't, like you said, you can't go back, right? And
yeah.
I 100% believe that you are exactly where you were supposed to be right now, right?
Yes.
You are
Hmm.
exactly where you're supposed to be. God's purpose for you. God didn't like look at you and go, I told you to do this a long time ago. God was like, I know. It's like you said, he's got those examples for you. He's building you up. He's making you the person that you are. And he knows what you have to go through to get where you are and where he wants you to be ultimately. I love how you said that, he uses every experience, for his glory, right? And
Yes.
so for everything that that we go through, at the time we don't get it, but when you look back, hindsight is 2020, but hindsight is also glorifying and you can go, "Oh, thank you, God. I understand
Yes.
why where I'm here now, right?"
Yes.
So amazing, amazing. Um, Mental awareness or mental wellness, I should say, and trauma-informed care are at the heart of your work, right? Because
Yes.
that is so, so important. And obviously, with your experiences and stuff. So, how do you define trauma-informed care? And why is it so important in today's world, especially for women?
Trauma informed care to me means that to understand trauma in your, because like I didn't understand before I really started researching and educating myself on exactly what that means. Because people say that a lot, trauma informed care, and then you got to add practice because if you're taking that trauma and you're getting the information you need to understand the trauma in your life or trying to help others with the trauma in their life, what that looks like, the definitions, even when I started seeing my therapist and she was telling me about codependency and narcissists or how people were treating me, all the different terminology, I just started researching it. I became so trauma informed, trying to understand why am I reacting or responding the way I am and what is that cycle that I keep repeating and why. When I started researching exactly what that means, it helped me so much to understand why I was doing it or why I was reacting, responding to it, to people or the situation the way I was, and what that trauma does to your body. People need to understand trauma better so they can understand themselves. And there's a couple different ways I did that. The Body Keeps a Score, the
Yeah,
book. It is
100%.
so true
Amazing.
what the body, how it holds the trauma and what it does to us. And I think if we become more trauma informed to understand exactly what that means. Yes, so trauma informed care and the body keeps a score and how important it is for people to understand what that means. And so, but once you once I started researching it and understanding myself and help other people to understand themselves, what that trauma means, then you want to put into practice the things you've learned to be aware of. And another thing that I really have researched and educated myself on is at adverse childhood experiences. And that's even part of the book, the Body Keeps the Score. He talks
Mhm.
about those in there too, how important it is for us to understand from the time we're in utero until the time we're 18, any trauma that happened to us during that time is the reason why we react and respond the way we do as an adult.
Right.
And to go back to go back and think of all the things that happen, and I can catch myself, like, oh, wait a minute, I don't want to respond or react that way because of the trauma I had in my life, because that's how I would back then, and I want to do it differently. And I really believe that God has helped me in His Word. There, you get from the Genesis to Revelations, the best love story I've ever read in my whole life on how much God truly loves me, and knowing about trauma and how it affected me and the different reasons why, getting that information. But I also want to put into practice to love myself and to love others as God says we are to. And I just think that's so important. So when I'm talking to others, I talk about the body keeps a score or the adverse childhood experiences. You can truly change and rewire your brain because that's the way we were made, even though what happened to us doesn't define who we are. And so when when I teach a class and I'm telling people about that, or even if they have children in their care, figure out your trauma in your life so you can start working on the healing process, especially when you have children in your care that you're teaching or your child care workers. Or I'm going to Belize, and in Belize, all the children that those caregivers are of those children need to understand the trauma in their life and work through it so they can see and realize it in the lives of those children
Right.
and why they might come to school or might come to class and they're not like the other children or they're not learning like the other children, but you don't know what that child just went through the night before,
Right.
you
Right.
know. And so with adverse child experiences, when I researched that and understood, the domestic violence that between my parents affected me, even if a child's not being abused, but there's domestic violence in the home, or if the parents self-talk to themselves negatively, it affects the child because they
Hmm.
hear it, they see it, and they're taking on that. There's two different, like there's vicarious trauma and compassion trauma. Even children take that on, not just as adults, because,
Right.
we do offer I do offer trainings in that area too, but it happens to children. And
Hmm.
so if I would have known and understood the body keeps the score and adverse childhood experience is before my mother had passed away, I think I would have reacted and responded even differently to her. I've always, even though there was a lot of child abuse and she allowed people in my life that shouldn't have never been in my life, and she was really never sorry about it. I always treat her with respect, even though all that happened, because I didn't want something to happen to her and then I feel bad because I wasn't the child of God to my mother as who I should have been. And I'm not saying that's what, is best for anyone else, but that's what was best for me because everyone's got to find out what's best for them.
Right.
And that's how I handle it because everyone that has gone through childhood adverse experiences, their resilience level is different. That's another thing I teach on because you can teach that, but you got to teach on the resilience level because we all have a different level of resilience. Because if we could have gone through the same trauma, but how we react and responded and how we are able to cope through it is different. And
Right.
people need to understand that. And so I'm so grateful that God gave me a high resilience level. And so, going through that when my mom went through cancer, and I was the one who would go visit her. I would take her places. I would be the one, trying to get her the care she needs, even though I wasn't her favorite person.
Right.
But it was okay. I was
Right.
always showing her the love of Christ. And if you were to take have you ever seen the Adverse Childhood Experience
Yeah.
questionnaire?
Yeah.
So there's 10
Amazing. Hmm.
questions. And when
Hmm.
I teach on that and I give it out and people are looking at me, I'm like, you don't have to tell me your score.
Right. All right.
Like, you don't have to share. But I think it's important that you realize where you're at on that 1 through 10.
Hmm.
Because, they'll say on that score, if the higher your score, your chances of illnesses, cancer, diabetes is higher, your chances of addictions and just things don't turn out well in your life. I want to give them the hope that that is not true, but to realize they did go through those things, and if they are struggling in an area or they are starting to have health issues or something in their life, because of the adverse child experience is showing up at a later time in life,
Hmm.
we can rewire our brains, we can change that. And I tell people I'm a 10 on that score,
Right.
and they just look at me, and I just want to
Hmm.
give people hope. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not dumb. You're not broken. Even if you are a 10, you can change your life because there's resilience. And resilience comes from connections with other people, comes with communication. Let people know you need help. Let people know that you care. I love people. All I've ever wanted was to be loved and to give
Right.
love. And I know I can get that through Christ. But I can also help other people feel loved and know that they are lovable and that they can give love. And
Amen.
so when I understood that and I figured that out, my mom would have been on the scale a 10 also.
Right.
And so that's why she treated me the way she did or treated other people or reacted and responded to people. But she never understood trauma. She never understood what that was in her life. I think it would have made a difference if she would have. It's
Right.
made a big difference in my life. And
Right.
that's why when I say trauma informed care and practice, I really truly mean that wholeheartedly, that people need to understand trauma, but put it into practice of the healing to get what they need out of understanding it.
Right.
And so when I started seeing my therapist and I just started talking to her about my childhood and different things, going through, and she's like, "Oh, you're codependent." And I'm like, no, I don't depend on anyone. And she's like,
Right.
that's not what that means. So you see how
Right.
important it is to
Right.
understand what that means? She goes, no, codependent means that you are trying to make everyone happy at the expense of your sadness. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
I would try to make, because I didn't want my parents fighting and argue. And you tiptoe around, you're trying to not cause any more issues, and you're trying to get everyone so everyone's happy, but nobody ever was happy. But it's just codependency is not what people think. And I'm so glad that I've learned that. I mean, I started seeing my therapist, what, 4 years ago to
Right.
go all that trauma in my life to deal with. There's nothing wrong with therapy. We
No.
have, to me, she's part of helping me as my life coach. God is my spiritual
Mhm.
coach. I have a
Mhm.
life coach. I have an accountant who's my financial coach. I have people that I work out with that are my physical coaches.
Right.
It's okay to have, and that's why I peer trauma coach people. I come alongside them, let them know they're they're not alone. So, but
That's so
yeah.
amazing. That's so amazing. And it's one thing when people dig in and they understand what their trauma is, it helps, you said you got to put it into practice. But one way of putting it into practice is understanding that trauma can manifest in so many different ways, right? So when you start seeing what your trauma is and how you're reacting to that trauma, that's your trigger. And so when you
Hmm.
can understand what your triggers are for each one of those events, then when something hits you and you're like, why am I responding this way? Then you can step back and you can go, oh my gosh, that's a trigger. That made me feel this. And
Hmm.
when you can stop and give yourself time to, and I think it's important. I mean, everybody is like, everybody has trauma in their life, whether it's
Yes.
extreme trauma that everybody can see, and they're like, oh my gosh, your life was this, and however you score on that, even if you're
Hmm.
scoring a 1 or 2 on that little test, you're still having trauma because life is trauma. We live in a broken world. We live in a world that is hard, you know,
Yes.
and we
Hmm.
do carry those traumas of our parents. We do carry the traumas of everything else, whether it's just, my parents never abused me, but they would say this to me or they would say that to me. Well, words have power, and
They do.
those words can be harmful and hurtful and everything like that. So when you start digging into it, and I'm a firm believer that everybody needs to dig into it, right? Everybody needs to, if you think that you've had the greatest life, you probably have had a good life, but there's still things there that are triggering you. And
Hmm.
one of, I think, the superpowers that God gives us is that He allows us the ability to choose how we're going to respond to certain circumstances. But if we don't take the time to understand that that circumstance was triggering us and what thought that was that allowed us to feel that emotion, then it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility, I guess, to do that. It's our responsibility when we're understanding or when we start noticing that we are responding to circumstances in a way that is not healthy, in a way that is not uh, that could be hurtful to somebody else. If we're responding that way, then we have a trigger somewhere and we need to figure out what that trigger is. I love how you say, our job is to love others, right? To love
Hmm.
others as God has loved us, but we can't love somebody. We can't extend the grace like the grace that you extended your mom because you understood that her life was a 10 on that scale. And even though she didn't know it, you recognized it. And
Hmm.
so, because you recognized it, you were able to extend that grace and you were able to take care of her how she needed to take care of herself, which allowed you to love her how God has loved you.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Yes.
And that's powerful. And that's what I think we are supposed to do as humans, right? We are supposed to have grace for each other, but we can't have grace for each other until we have grace for ourselves and realize what our triggers are, realize how we're responding and all of that. So incredibly amazing that your mission and your story. This is fantastic.
Yes.
So I know you're passionate about teaching the Krav Maga. Did I say that right?
It's Krav Maga.
Okay. I'm gonna let
Yeah.
you say it because once I say something wrong, it's wrong forever. So I just renamed
Okay.
it.
Okay.
So how does self-defense fit into your overall philosophy of empowerment, and why is it so crucial? Why is it such a crucial tool for building that resilience?
When I started taking the class and what I learned in the class, even from my instructor, Aaron, was so empowering to me because through abuse and not setting boundaries, you know, that was part of my trauma. And so in that class, learning how to you can set boundaries with your body and your voice, and de-escalate the situation. I didn't know how to do all that. My response was to either shut down,
Mhm.
fight or, freeze or fawn. And so, giving people away, being codependent. But in that class, they taught me to use my voice, use my body as boundaries, talk it out, try to get people to not hurt me or physically or emotionally, but if they do come at me and try to hurt me physically, I'm able to defend myself. And that gave me empowerment and gave me confidence and courage. And the most important thing I like to teach is situational awareness. Be aware of your surroundings. And I realized I learned that at a very young age because of the abuse of my mother or the abuse of others that she allowed in my life. When I would go places because I had to. When you're a child, you have to do what your parents say. You cannot control your own life. And so when we would go places, I would watch people walk into the room. I would look at their eyes, I'd look at their body language. What was their intent towards me? So that's what situation awareness, be aware of your surroundings, but aware of the people in your surroundings.
Mhm.
And so when I teach that in my classes, I think that's very empowering for people to help so they don't always have a dramatic incident happen in their life, that trauma that they have to carry forward and get the healing from. So one of the examples that I give is I went to Cleveland 2 years ago because I went on a Belize trip,
Mhm.
which I'm going on again. And where I parked was in the back of the hotel, but I was under a light, which I think that's important. In the hotel online was said it was a 4 star, but when I got there, it was not. But it was already late, and I was getting up early to get on my flight to leave. And so in the morning, I got up at 5 o'clock. I came out to my car, and as I came out to my vehicle, I always look around to see if there's anyone out there. In next to the hotel, there's a fence is between the hotel and the highway. And it was a fence you could jump over, but I could see the highway going, the highway, and then there was an overpass with another highway. A car at the time I was coming out stopped in the middle of the highway. He opened his door, started heading towards me.
Oh my
He says,
gosh.
hey, what are you doing? He goes, hey, how are you doing? So I just shut the car door. I turned around and went right back into the hotel. Situational awareness. Because
Mhm.
I'm not going to stand there and wait for him to come over and see what he wants. I
Right.
didn't want to freeze because, I'm like thinking, oh, get scared and then you freeze and then he gets to me. First of all, why did he stop? Why is his door still open? And here he is heading towards me. And so that knowing the classes I'd taken to try to explain to people, just turn around and get back in the hotel, wait for him to leave. So that's situational awareness. But as I'm walking away, I'm like thinking, what do I have to do to him if he catches up to me?
Right, right, exactly, exactly. And that's so powerful because it makes you um not a victim, right?
Right. And that's
It
why I say no one deserves to be anyone's victim.
right.
And one of the reasons I call you matter, I came up with the name, is because I think no one deserves to be anyone's victim. And my mother, I know, and this is even though I had not a good relationship with my mother, the you matter actually when I figured out how to get to what I wanted to name my business was because of my mom. I know she never felt like she mattered.
Right.
And I remember not feeling like I mattered. And when you feel like you don't matter, you can't get the help you need or work through the trauma. And so I just truly believe everyone matters and they need to know that. You don't deserve to be anyone's victim. So teaching situational awareness and self-defense, I just believe that it empowers people to give them, you know, I know a lot of places will say you can't just do one class and then you can defend yourself. No, but it's a start, but the situation awareness is the most important, not the self-defense portion of it. Just be aware
Right.
of your surroundings, see who's in it, don't put yourself in a place to where you become, a victim of anybody. Show confidence, heads up, eyes forward, shoulders back. Those are the things I teach because they're looking for the person with their head down, earbuds in on their phone. So if I would have came out of that hotel with my earbuds in, looking at my phone, dragging my suitcase, would I've seen him or even heard him? No, I could have been his next victim.
Right.
So,
Right. Wow. And it's simple things like that that oftentimes we don't even think about that
mhm.
make all the difference. How many times do you hear about people who are running or they're walking with their earphones in and people come up behind them? So,
Yes.
amazing.
I've
You
heard,
t
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
When I teach the classes, so I have my trauma informed care classes and workshops, and I have my situation awareness and self defense class. When I'm teaching the situation awareness self defense, all the stories that people share, which I always encourage, please share because then that'll help anyone else in the classroom. But also, I like to share a lot of their stories in my classes too. But you wouldn't believe how many in the area share stories about incidents like that, people just coming up to them, they weren't paying attention or they were paying attention. I love the stories where they're paying attention, but then the ones that weren't, how we can share. But it also brings awareness to the one. She's like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I should have done that. I
Right.
should have been more aware of my surroundings. So, and families too. I've worked with families where one girl was approached by a stranger here in Meadville, and the mom saw him coming down the street as they were coming to get in their vehicle. But the mom decided to go on the passenger side that her daughter was on because she's 13. This guy
Hmm.
came up and put himself between the mother and the daughter and was just right in front of the daughter, looking her up and down. I
Oh
mean,
my
this
gosh.
was so frightful for the daughter. And the mom, she looked him right in the face, said, "You get away from my daughter now." Told her daughter to run. So they ran back to the building they were in and called the cops. But because the mother did not freeze or try to, she confronted him, looked him in the eye, knew what he looked like, was able to identify him. That's another thing. People need
Hmm.
to pay attention, identify people. I tell people to teach their children, there's tricky people and it isn't stranger danger anymore because I'm a stranger, but I'm not going to cause any danger. But there's tricky people, and what do those tricky people look like? But their children need to identify the stranger. You can play I Spy with my little eye as a
Hmm.
game for situational awareness, not just your environment, but the people in it. I
Right.
see a person with a red hat, or I see someone with black glasses. They need to know how to define, identify tall, short, long hair, what color the person is, all very important things. So that mother was able to identify this guy, and the police were able to pick him up. And she
Wow.
asked me if I would come and teach a class in her home for her daughter, for her mother who has a walker, her aunt who is older, doesn't have the best balance, and then her pregnant sister. So I really tailor my
Yeah.
classes to the people. So I actually was able to show each of them in that class what was best for them. So,
That's
but
awesome.
it's just classes like that is just so important just to know those little things. And that little girl, when I first came in, she looked very sad and very traumatized. And so by the time the end of the class, her cheeks were rosy and she was laughing. You know what I mean?
You gave her
Instead of
some power
allowing
back.
her, yeah, instead of just having that incident happen and then, in my house, if something happened, we never talked about it. My brother died, we weren't allowed to talk about it. I had to hold that all that in there. That's a lot.
That is a
And
lot.
but
Yeah.
this mother empowered her daughter by, bringing me in, having this class, teaching her and just empowering them that situation awareness and what she did was what happened was bad, but how they handled it was good.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Wow. So you're involved in so many incredible initiatives out there, from supporting domestic violence survivors to advocating on the Human Traffic Task Force. So how do you balance all these projects and how do you keep motivated? Because even like the little classes that you're doing, for that family, that's amazing. Um,
Mhm.
but there's so many like that you're doing, so many things that you're involved in. So how do you keep all these projects and keep motivated to keep doing them all?
Well, actually, when like the month of June, I had a lot of classes. I went and taught the trauma workshops. I went to a church and I was able to give my testimony, and I always call it my preach and teach, which I love.
Uh-huh.
And teach smart classes with the self-defense with different organizations or businesses in the area. I That is like such a motivator for me. It's just like when like some months I have more activities than others, and then the month that I don't, I know that I need to be focused on podcasts and YouTube channels, my YouTube channel. So the months that I'm busy, I'm motivated, Then the months that it's slower, I reach out to friends. I make sure that I'm engaging with my board for my foundation. I'm trying to keep engaging and building, and I really want a strategy and sustainability in You Matter because I really want this to continue to be able to help people. And the way of doing that is by connection, by, letting people know, if you're having a bad day, let someone know. If you need a little bit of encouragement, I used to keep that all to myself. And it was not a benefit to me or anyone that was in my life, you
Right,
know, hug my grandbabies, like, oh, I need this hug,
right, right.
but it's just a good support system in with, you know, like with underground moves, it's so important, if you want me to tell you about that, but I know you
Hmm.
know a little bit about it. But when people are getting out of a bad situation, they need a good support system,
Right.
or even if you're not going through a bad situation, just going through life to have a good support system. That's family, your friends, organizations, volunteering. I tell people, volunteering really helps you in your healing process of trauma,
Yeah. Gets
helping
your
other
sights off of
people.
yourself and put them on other people. 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I, go to my human trafficking task force meeting, or if I'm not able to make getting on Zoom, just be able to connect with them is important. Just getting involved. That's what motivates me. And I'm like, I used to go to class at my Krav Maga class, and we would go through the combatives, and then he would do a fatigue drill. And a fatigue drill is like everything you just learned, but at high intensity level. And so he gets me all wound up. I'm like, you wind me up, and I'm ready to keep going. And he's like, okay, class is over. I'm like, no. Oh,
Right.
yeah,
I'm ready. So yeah,
yeah,
it is, like a snowball effect, right? When you start seeing, and especially, like when you were talking about that daughter at the end of her meeting, she was feeling so empowered,
yeah,
and that in itself
yes,
is motivating. And so then it's like, okay, what can we do next? Who can we help next?
yes,
And just let that snowball effect go. You did mention, and I did want to talk about the underground moves, and that is helping people, specifically almost in domestic violence, though, isn't it? Isn't the underground moves?
yes,
And so
yes.
can you talk about your partnership, with underground moves, and what role it plays, in creating stronger, more resilient communities?
Yes, with Underground Moves with Kayla Shannon,
Hmm.
which you've met and you've spoke with, is for
She's
domestic. It's
amazing.
domestic. Yeah, she is
Yeah,
amazing.
she's
I'm
amazing.
so glad she asked me to come alongside her and offer peer trauma and coaching and the self defense portion. in excuse me, in working with people going through domestic violence. And because every single one of us that are working with Underground Moves, we've all gone through domestic violence. And we know how hard it is to be in it and how to get out of it. Or even, not everyone has to get out of it if they don't want, because you can't make anyone get up something they don't want to get out of, but they
Right.
need support as they're going through it. And so with that, we offer it to different businesses in letting them know because they can offer it to their employees. So it's an employee paid program. But we do have individuals that are on it too. So
Hmm.
we don't turn anyone away. We will work with anyone. And so it's an app on your phone that you can go on and the abuser doesn't know that it's an app that you can reach out to us and get the support and help that you need. It looks like a game. And so on there, the connection is with any one of us at any time, but also we're there to helping you, support you, and give you the coaching that you need or the therapy that you need to get through and out of that situation. And we've gone and spoke with different realtors in the community that know what we're doing. So if we to even any housing authorities too, we have connections with them to help them to find a place to live because that's hard when you're trying to do it without anyone knowing. And a lot of
Right.
times these people don't want other people knowing that what they're going through. So they don't want to reach out to anyone they know to get the help they need. So here we are.
Goes back to that shame.
Yes, and here we
Yeah.
are. And so it doesn't matter where you're at in the status of life, if you're, rich or not, you know what I mean?
Right.
We're middle class or wherever you're at in life. We're there to help you. I know if there was something like a program like this out there when I was going through it, that would have been so helpful to know how do I find a place to rent. Here we are helping with the applications. We're working with different organizations in the area, Women's Services,
Hmm.
Center for Family Services. We've reached out to all of them. We've had meetings with all of them. They know what we're doing, and we're trying to help fill in that gap for like the people that are working because you have a job. But if you don't have the finances to be able to get into an apartment because you need first month's rent, security deposit, we help you figure that out too, how to get that. Excuse me. We help you with, we have an attorney who is willing to work with us too on the retainer fee. There's just, anything that it takes as you're going through trying to get out of that domestic violence situation, we're working with you, whatever avenue that is
Hmm.
and whatever that looks like. If you need a PFA, I've gone to people's PFA hearings with them because they don't want to involve anyone in their family. So their spouse doesn't even, they're like, who is this person? You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
I'm there sitting next to you, giving you the confidence and encouragement to go through with this and do this and how important it is that you matter and that we're here. And then after the fact, once you're out of that situation, we help. I mean, if you need help moving day, I went to their housewarming parties, we're there
Hmm.
giving that support, even the aftercare. So after they're out and they're going through, what did I do? Was this the right? Because we have those doubts,
Right.
and then you have that person telling you that you messed up our family, because I heard it all.
Hmm.
You broke up our family. And then if they bring in the children, and the children start saying things, you need that support, letting you know what you did is the right thing. Each day it gets better, but it
Right.
does take the time, but we're there with you and for you.
I think one of
So,
the most important, or one of the most fantastic things about that whole movement too is when somebody is going through all of that, there is so much, right? And it's almost like you guys give them the opportunity to step into it, and you've done all the heavy lifting for them. And
mm,
you're thinking about things that's not even on their horizon yet, right?
yes,
You have stuff set up for them for when they get to this point and they're looking around going, oh my gosh, what do I do about this? You're like, oh no, I got you. This is already in
yes.
here.
Hmm.
Because I cannot even imagine the all the little details, but you guys have covered all those little details. And I think that is just so fantastic. And so allows the person who's going through it, it's like their first step of healing. and
Hmm.
first step of knowing that they're not alone, first step
Yeah.
of having someone come alongside them and walk through that with them.
And we think it's
Fantastic.
important too that, you got to have a budget, understand, because you don't want to move out and get to where you can't afford and you have to go back. It's important to have a budget to make sure that you can afford, the rent and other bills that you have, you know, and I know there was times when there's people want to leave, but they weren't ready, excuse me, financially, or if the children were in school, or there's so many dynamics to it. We want, like you
Right.
said, we want to make sure it's it's a success when they leave and they don't feel like they have to go back because there's steps that you have to take to make sure that it's sustainable for you to do that.
Right.
So,
Right. And that in itself, though, I think is empowering, because once they start looking at that, it gives them a sense of, I'm taking back my life. I know that I have to get this. I know I have to get to this point. So once I get to this point, then I'm going to take the next step, and then I'm going to take the next step. But it takes away the fear of overwhelm and I don't
yes.
even know what I'm doing to, oh no, we have steps for you to go through, and this is how we're going to do it, so that that foundation is strong and that sustainability is long term.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. Um, let's switch real quick and talk about Belize, because you've been there before and you're going
Hmm.
back. And I know that Belize is such a huge part of your heart. And it's such an exciting opportunity. I mean, it's
Yes.
amazing, amazing. So share about your mission, and how people can get involved to support it.
Okay. When I first started U.Matter in January 2023, the organization asked me if I would go on a missions trip with them because they're going to be working and ministering to 180 different children. All have been abused in some form. And they were asking if I would come and share my testimony when they asked me to share it because it would be more for the teenagers. Because we
Mhm.
we wanted the teenagers to know that people in our group have felt trauma in their lives, in hardship, in abuse. So they weren't alone and that we understand where they're coming from because I know myself if I was a teenager and somebody was talking to me and they haven't gone through things that I've gone through, I wasn't sharing anything with them. And so the organizer of our mission trips, she understands that. And so she asked me if I would. I said, absolutely. And then she said, would you be willing to teach situational awareness and self-defense to all the kids? And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, God, I have never done this before with the children because I've worked with adults,
Right,
Here
right.
you are. Oh, you want me to teach kids? And there's a little bit of a language barrier, especially the one class I had to have an interpreter. And I'm like, okay, I will try this. And so we get to Belize and, we start working with it. Like we went to many different places for that many children. It was amazing to just talk with them, share with them, to see 4-year-olds. That was hardest. And you're not allowed to hug them unless they come up to you. But when the one home we were working with, the little ones, the first day you play, just, I prayed and I asked God, I said, how do you want me to work with these children? Excuse me. And he said, I mean, I can't you play games, situational awareness. That's where I came up with that. I'm like, oh, exactly. You pay attention to your environment, but you got to pay attention to the person in your environment, their body language, just like I did as a child. He just used the example of how I was as a child with situational awareness, so I wasn't going to get abused by that person. Do the same with the children. And
Mhm.
so we played games and we laughed and we talked about things at each child's, we always, whoever's the youngest one in the class, that's where you're at, and I do that
Mhm.
now with any class I teach. And so that's what I did. The boys loved it. And then I started saying boundary stance because they didn't know what
Uh-huh.
Krav Maga was, but I did
Right.
say it. So the boys would love saying Krav Maga. But it was such a joy to see their life and to see how they're living and what they've gone through and just even though we're there for that amount of time, like you said, one word, And I tell people one phrase, one word could change someone's life forever, positive or negative. It really matters. And so just being there and working with those children and teaching them and ministering them, we were teaching them healthy boundaries, mentally, physically, sexually, spiritually. You know, we were just, wanted to teach them that. And then that one house that we're at with the 4-year-olds up through the 17-year-olds. And the next day, the 4-year-olds, when I was sitting, they came and they sat next to me. And they kind of put their head on my arm and they trusted me.
Yeah.
And as a child, that's a hard thing to do when
You
you're
were
a baby.
safe, you
Yeah,
know?
and they felt safety with me. But that's like the greatest gift God can ever give you is to experience something you've always wanted when you were a child. And then to give that to another child. It was wonderful. Sorry. And then the teenagers, when I shared my testimony the day before with them, they're like, wow, really? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, where was your dad? Like they would
Right.
they challenged my story to see if it was true and that I didn't have the love and support like they didn't. I said, well, my dad died in a car accident
Mhm.
when I was 31. And they're like, what? And I said, yeah, and so it was just amazing. And then the next day when I went back and then the teenagers, two of them came up to me and they're like, Miss Susie, thank you so much for sharing. And they gave me hugs because we had that, we knew we had shared experiences, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So now they asked me if I'd go back this year and work with all the caregivers of all those children
Wow.
and the human trafficking home that we went and built gardens for them,
Hmm.
vegetable gardens in 100-degree plus temperature. It was so hot, but we did it for them, and we didn't get to meet them, which we understand, but we were helping them with life skills by building them a garden, and then they were going to tend to and take care of it. And these were women that were rescued from human trafficking in that
Wow.
area.
Wow.
So we're going back to work with all the caregivers, and we're going to offer a retreat with training and workshops. And it's just, I'm so excited that we're able to, because they need the help too. Because can you imagine just that time we spent with those children while we were there, but they're with them all the time.
Yeah.
So you need um, a retreat, you need trainings and workshops and relaxation, but with people that we come and we offer that to them, we give back
Hmm.
to them. So, and that's at the
Wow.
end of August 24th through September 2nd. So I'm actually going to get off here and get on a call with them because we're trying to figure out the rest of the details. But I'm really excited that they asked me to come back. And then I'm also going to teach situational awareness, self-defense.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And what a powerful, powerful opportunity and experience because
Mhm.
you're changing their lives, but they're changing your life as well,
Oh,
and that
exactly.
is yeah, fantastic. Okay, so to wrap up, what's
Okay.
one takeaway you hope listeners walk away with from today's conversation?
Exactly like you said. When we share our stories and we want to help other people, I always say helping others people help you to heal too.
Yeah.
It's just so important to let your guard down with the right people. So I always tell people if you need someone to talk to, you can talk to me. I want people to know, even though you might not know me, but you can share with me and you can trust me and I will walk alongside you and help you. And I just think more people need to know that and understand that. You know,
Yeah.
it's always good to volunteer, get out there and help the community, help build the community. We have a great community. They have been
Mhm.
so supportive for me and with me, just
Yeah.
I want to be the image of Christ. And I'm hoping that more, people see that and it becomes a ripple effect. So,
Powerful. Powerful. Well, Susie, thank you so much for joining us today and just sharing your incredible journey. It is just so inspiring and meaningful. And I love all of the work you're doing through your
Thank you.
foundation, the You Matter Foundation. So, and you're making such a difference, not only in our community, but worldwide. And this does have the ripple effect. And I think you just need to really stand in the confidence of the difference that you're making.
Thank you.
Um,
I appreciate that.
so, for anyone who's interested in learning more about you, to support you, you have that nonprofit, or if they just want to get involved, how do they reach you? Can you share your information now? And then I'll make sure it's in the show notes as well.
Yes, you can go to my website. It's spelled out umatterfdn.org. And there is a form in there you could fill out, and it emails to me if you want to connect with me. Also, if you want to donate or you want to register for any of the classes that I offer, I teach trauma informed care to organizations, businesses. I've done classes for employees, employers, because it's good even in your business or your organization to understand what trauma means there in your business, but also what people are bringing in when they come to work for you.
Right.
And so I would teach situational awareness self-defense with 4-year-olds all the way up to aging adults. You could, with walkers, disabilities, doesn't matter because we all need to be situationally aware. And, that to me is why I always say comprehensive mental health, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, all those are important things to work on to help you get to, where you can turn it around, build that resilience, and help others. So,
Love it. Love it
yeah.
so much. Well, thank you so much. What an honor, um, and privilege it was to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So,
For anyone interested in learning more about Susie's work or getting involved, be sure to visit her website at umatterfoundation.org and connect with her on Facebook at umatter Foundation. You can also check out her personal protection products with Damsel in Defense and support the upcoming Belize mission trip at the links provided. Don't forget to go to my website at www.mindycurtishealthcoach.com, take your free toxicity quiz, and schedule a free 30-minute consultation. Thanks for being here. Have a great day.